Okay, great. Yeah, I feel much more relaxed than last time. I don't know why. I wasn't expecting to be nervous. I mean, I'm not a nervous person when it comes to speaking, really, because I do a lot of it. But last time, I was quite surprised to find myself weirdly kind of self-conscious and nervous. But now I feel great. Now I just feel like I got my kinks out last time.
It's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How are you feeling?
A bit tired.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why?
I watched Eurovision, stayed up late, got a lot of beer in my system.
Was it good?
The beer or the Eurovision?
Both.
I mean, Eurovision's weird, but it's fun to watch. I mean, I wouldn't want to watch it every weekend, but I think once a year, it's kind of fun.
Yeah, it's interesting. Actually, I'll steal a point that Ari made last night. We chatted about it because everyone was posting on Facebook about it. We were sort of joking about how it's funny that like lots of people who, kind of left-leaning, kind of tend to be anti-nationalist, kind of cosmopolitan types, get really into this kind of like nationalist spectacle, right? Or I guess you could argue that it's like that it is a cosmopolitan kind of supra-European kind of affair.
Yeah, because you can't vote for your own country.
Oh, true, right. So it's kind of anti-nationalist.
Right. So you can kind of cheer for your own country, but the other thing that's kind of weird is that like how people engage with it really differs from country to country, I think.
Oh yeah, they've done like empirical voting analysis, haven't they?
There's like one art. I'm not sure. Yeah, YouGov did like a poll.
Oh, okay.
And of like motivations for watching Eurovision, and basically Brits, the motivations to laugh at everyone. And kind of the further east you go, I think the more it's like cheer on your own country. So a lot of probably newly independent countries, I think, put way more stock in doing well. And I know that was pretty serious. Like Sweden's really brings its A game. I think they have like a serious investment in it. Who else? Like France and Italy are serious about it, but I think it's just because they're like serious countries when it comes to the arts, and they're not fucking around. And then like other countries, you're just like, what the fuck? Like Georgia and Cyprus. There's a few countries where it's clearly just some weird thing. And then like there's also these different genres, right? There's like some like bad pop metal bands, like basically bad hair metal bands from the 80s. It's like, and it seems to be like Central European countries do that. And then like a lot of ladies who like to belt it out. I think that's kind of the winning formula normally.
Yeah, I hate to be a downer, but I kind of feel like, I mean, I had fun last year when we came over and watched it with you two, just because it was fun to hang out with you two. We could have switched out Eurovision for anything else, and I would have enjoyed it. I think Eurovision itself, I think it's kind of dumb. I kind of don't understand. Maybe I just haven't accessed its charm fully. I mean, I guess I see that it's, there's weird, interesting kinds of entertaining, amusing acts. But, yeah, on the whole, I kind of don't really feel pulled into it. Does that make me a stupid heathen?
No, not at all. Why?
So tell me other shit. Tell me, so why did you drink a lot? How much did you drink?
Well, you're supposed to get drunk when you watch Eurovision.
Is that part of the tradition?
Yeah, I think the idea is it starts at like, well, for us it starts at 8. For like other countries it starts at 9. That's the other kind of really weird thing is the further east you go. So like Russia, it's going to start like 10 or 11. So it's really kind of late at night party thing, right?
Are there betting markets for it?
Oh, it's massive betting. Yeah.
Do you mess with that?
No, I never really. I should play the betting markets.
I think I might start playing the betting markets just a little bit here and there. I'm just kind of intrigued.
I think we should go to the betting shop, man, right now and go play some bets.
No, I would only do interesting kind of political betting online.
Oh.
You probably can't do that at the fucking Ladbrokes.
Sure you can.
Can you? Political betting?
I don't know. Let's go find out.
You mentioned this last time. I think you're really keen to start
gambling.
I
say we should go gamble. I say what we do is we put a small pool of cash together, like a little betting pool, and we probably will lose it all. But we could like make some bets and then track them on this podcast and then see how we do.
Oh, okay. I mean, we could do
for science, not for profit.
We could use crowdsourced forecasting, which is actually really pretty incredible how it works. Do you know about this stuff?
No.
Did you know that basically for a certain class of political events, if you ask normal, just educated, fairly informed, but typical people, their sort of opinion or judgment or prediction about what's going to happen, and you ask a bunch of them and you average it out, that is often a better predictor than asking a bunch of experts.
Yeah, I could see that. I think
they've done tests with.
Yeah, the problem is the betting markets think they also change the odds, right? So it's not straight up odds for like right now you'd get very bad odds if you wanted to bet Hillary Clinton for president, right? Because I think they figure it's 80% probability.
Yeah, right. So you bet like 50 and you would get like 5 or something if you win. Yeah.
Do
you know what Trump is getting?
Well, I assume he's getting like 19 or 20 if she's getting 80.
Oh, but there are lots of other
5
possibilities, right?
Well, now it's basically down to 2, and maybe they leave 1% for random events.
To be honest, I don't actually understand too much I don't understand too well how it works because are the bets set up so that you're betting on Hillary as opposed to some other sort of outcome? Or
yeah, it's Hillary winning or any other outcome.
Versus any other possible outcome.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. Yeah.
I mean, there's like in any kind of gambling, there's also more intricate bets, right? So you can do like the kind of betting I really like is the track. I like the horse track. So I like to go to the track.
Really?
It's fun.
Why do you like that?
It's a 3-hour event. You get a program the day before and you can kind of do a bit of research. Then you go to the track and it's like normally 10, 12 races and they're really fast, like 2 minutes each. And there's a little gap in between and you place bets on each race. It's kind of a good afternoon out. I
think it's very decadent.
Why do you think it's decadent?
I think it's shameful.
Why?
Because it's for rich people.
No, it's not at all.
Yeah, it is.
You've never been to a track, have you?
Yeah, no, I'm just talking out of my ass. All I know about the track is, well, I know my grandfather used to go, but I never went. And yeah, I mean, but it is sort of bifurcated in the sense that there is a sort of elite, like wealthy elite that attends it and is associated with it, and then there's sort of like the poor, kind of like self-destructive gambling class.
Oh, the track's completely self-destructive gambling for the regulars, right?
But for the people with money who can burn that money, it is sort of an elite luxury, isn't it?
The people with money, so the elite, they don't really bet. I mean, they do gamble too, but they're the horse owners. And for them, the actual gambling's whether or not their horse wins and the prizes they win. And there's a whole weird political economy attached to it. Right? So basically, like at the high end, what you're trying to do is buy a horse for cheap, have it win a bunch of races, then breed it off. And that's where the real money's made. It's like you can get like a championship horse, its DNA is then good for breeding. Kind of the low end rich people, like they'll do these things called claiming races. So you go, like one of the ways they make sure the races are all like class, right? So you never put like a Kentucky Derby horse in like your local track crap race, right? So there's these things called claiming races. So anyone can claim the horse as entering that race. They pay a certain amount of money, right? So it basically discourages you from racing a horse if it's got any value at all. And the dodgier the track, the lower the claim is, because basically the horses. And I would go to very dodgy tracks.
Okay, wait. So, but do you know that article by Hunter S. Thompson about sort of the decadence of the horse tracks? Do you know this article?
No.
I forget the title of it. I think it was a one of his characteristic kind of gonzo journalist investigative pieces. I think it was about the Kentucky Derby. I haven't read it. I don't know, so I can't speak to it. I was only raising it because the title is something like, the decadence of the Kentucky Derby or some shit like that.
Yeah.
But it's basically, if I recall correctly, it's it is basically a critique of that culture as being really decadent.
Well, yeah, but it's a Kentucky Derby. It's like the highest of the high, right? It's like there's like hundreds of thousands of horse races around the world every year. And the Kentucky Derby is like the pinnacle. It's like the top horse race, the top horses.
Well, I think cultures should be judged by their highest representative.
Maybe. I mean, we could just go to like the local. Well, actually, we're pretty close to the Windsor track. Windsor track's probably our closest track, and that's like a pretty posh track.
That was it?
Like the whatchamacallit, it's the Royal Ascot, right? It's like it's right next to the Windsor Castle, and the Queen race their horses.
I would go.
Like,
I would check it out.
Yeah, and that's like the high end where people dress up in all their crap and whatever.
Do you have to pay just to get in?
For what, the main Royal Ascot?
Just
race?
to go in and look around.
It varies. It varies a lot. Most like I haven't really done a British track. I've done like a lot of American ones. So I'd go to like a Montreal one. So growing up, I go to Blue Bonnets, and that was like Montreal, and that wasn't even like thoroughbred racing. That was buggy racing. They had like a little horse and the rider would be behind a buggy because the horses were shit. And then there's also quarter racing because the horses are again crap. They're not purebred, so they just like run shorter distances. And then Minneapolis had a really good thoroughbred track called Canterbury Park, and that was fun. And there were a couple of guys in grad school who were like serious horse pickers.
Don't they? If they lose, don't they like kill them or something? Is that a thing?
Yeah, of course.
It's fucked up.
Well, that's what they do to humans too.
Not if you lose one race.
No, if you lose the game of life, they throw you off benefits and leave you to die.
Yeah, it's fucked up.
It's capitalism, baby.
Yeah, it's fucked up.
They don't kill them if they lose.
Do you support that? Do you support capitalism?
To support capital? I'm talking about horse racing here, man.
No, but we're transitioning.
Oh, okay. I mean...
You can go back to horse racing. I'm just bullshitting.
I don't have, like... I mean, yeah, it's exploitative of the animals, but, like, I'm vegetarian, and so I don't have that much guilt around animal exploitation, because I figure I've, like, consumed far less animal flesh in my life than the average human.
Oh, okay, so you feel like you've done your part.
Less guilt. And then, I mean, I'm not saying it's morally defensible. I couldn't, like, publish a coherent philosophical journal article saying horse racing is justified and eating meat's not. Like, I'm not going to take that
Not going
to
take that argument.
But, you know, it's kind of like... I don't know, like I walk to work every day, and so if like one day, rather than walking over here, I were to drive, like yeah, that acts like kind of selfish and lazy and bad for the environment, but I'm like, yeah, you know, my general net environmental actions, well, they're still pretty crap because I'm a first world guy and fly around a lot, but you know, I don't feel that guilty about it.
I think we could write a philosophical journal article about the justifiability of horse racing. I think the basic argument would be horses can't make computers and restaurants and skyscrapers, but humans can. Therefore, if horses can't win the race, then humans have the right to kill them.
They don't kill horses if they don't win the race. That's not true. If they get injured, if they get like irrevocably injured, they often do get destroyed. So it's kind of sometimes a bit more nasty. Like if they horse race and they break a leg or a hoof and it's not seen as easily repairable, they'll often put the horse down.
Okay. I mean, do you think that something that I often think about is I mean I basically support animal rights perspectives, even sort of radical ones. I'm friends with a lot of vegans, and I basically think it is fucked up to exploit animals in any way, including to kill them, to eat them, whatever. I do basically support that, I feel like.
Yeah.
So if someone asked me and I had to go on the record what I think, it would be, yeah, I think eating animals is fucked up. I think killing animals is fucked up. I think we should try to do it as little as possible. That's what I would say. But I do often think a lot. I find my mind going in different directions sometimes and kind of playing with other ideas, such as, for instance, I mean, the one thing I don't even know if this is intelligent or sophisticated. This might actually just be stupid when I say it. But I do often find my mind thinking about the simple fact that the animals kill each other, right? And this is just sort of the order of the animal kingdom.
Yeah.
And especially when you think about animals that kill humans, right? Like predators, right? Like bears and lions and things like that. And I sort of feel like, I don't know if you're familiar with sort of the more proper philosophical arguments here, but I sort of feel like creatures that have no regard for, sparing other creatures of pain, and even could, and if given the opportunity, would gladly eat me. I feel like that's a different philosophical puzzle regarding whether or not we can shoot them or eat them or whatever, or domesticate them. My mind always wants to say that if the animal doesn't give a shit about killing or causing pain to other animals, and especially me, then why should I care about it? And why should I not participate in the animal kingdom just like they do?
Because what animals would kill you?
Bears, right? Like mountain lions, large cats.
I don't know what. So bears, no. I mean, I've met black bears. They normally just take off. Even grizzlies tend to stay away.
But I mean, even like let's say like a deer, right, or like even like a fox or something, like possums, whatever. Sort of the actual animals. I'm just saying as random examples of animals we actually could see in neighborhoods or whatever potentially. Those would kill us if they could, but they can't. They're not They're not like being moral towards us. They would kill us if they could. They simply can't. That's just power, right? That's just force. They don't have the force to.
Yeah.
So.
I don't know if they would or not. It depends the animal.
Well, in general, they go around killing whatever they can to eat, right?
I don't know.
Well, my question to you is, doesn't that affect sort of the justification of whether or not we can kill or eat animals?
Why?
Well, I have a hard time understanding sometimes why. How can you have a moral obligation to a creature that does not have moral obligations to any other creatures or to you?
How can I have moral obligation? Okay, so I guess there's like two issues.
We don't have to talk about this.
No, we can. I mean, I think it's you can. I'm not actually. Haven't really read much of the animal rights literature.
Just what do you think? Whatever you think.
Well, okay. Thought one, your argument kind of rests on a bit of a false analogy, right? Because we don't hunt animals for most of our consumption of meat, right? Like, I don't know what it is, but it's definitely in like any 21st century political economy, it's got to be like next to null the amount of hunt. Like, when's the last time you ate hunted meat?
Yeah, only rarely, right? When I go to like the farmer's market or something, right?
Oh, so even there, it's like commercial hunt.
Yeah.
Right? Like when have you ever killed something and eaten it yourself?
I have not, no.
Right, and like what percentage of people do you think
have
very
done
small,
that,
right? Yeah. Very small. So it's not like.
So the argument is against the system of mass. Farming. And
I mean, most of the stuff is like against the breeding, captivity, and slaughter of animals. I think like people who hunt are on like a different moral plane to my existence. I'm like, okay, like at least you put the work in. Yeah. Right? Whereas this kind of mass production system, it's like we're breeding animals in very weird ways and basically not letting them live even pleasant existences and then butchering them and mass producing them and producing weird shit. Right, which is, I think, really hard to justify. I mean, there are very few people who even would, really. But I think the other thing's, like, it kind of also rests on this false equivalence that, like, I think if you were to, if you're just to make the observation, like, okay, what animal, okay, so if you're making the argument that what justifies you killing animals is that animals kill human beings as species, right? And therefore you're justified to kill animals because they kill or would kill humans. Without fear. Sure. All right. What species is most likely? What species killed more humans than any other species this year? Humans. Yeah, and so then logically you've said that you're justified then in killing and hunting humans and eating them. Probably so. Right? I would agree, I think. So, I mean, that strikes me when you kind of reach an absurd conclusion, you might want to think about the logic of stuff, right? So, I don't think that one person killing or threatening you thereby justifies you killing them. Yeah. Well, okay, I guess we agreed on the point, though, that hunting is sort of a different moral plane. Yeah. Yeah. No, like I said, I'm just playing with ideas. I don't really have a horse in this race to go back to. Horse racing's fun, even if it's immoral. Fair enough. Probably is immoral. I find it more socially unappealing than problematic with respect to animal rights. I think we should go to a track and then you report back what you think. So basically, I'll write the update to Hunter S. Thompson's article. Yeah, no, I think we should go do that. I find it a fun activity. I mean, you can do it other ways. People like normally you just bet on sports, right? Sporting events. Mm-hmm. Or you could play casino games. Like you used to play poker, right? So,
Yeah. We should, we should do that. I would support that. And then we could talk about it on the podcast.
Yeah.
Maybe we could do a live podcast from the, what's it called? What's the posh British one?
Well, the race is the Royal Ascot. I can't remember the name of the... You can look it up right now.
It's a great name. No, like I said, I need to get like a unpaid intern who can do the Google searches for us while we're talking.
I mean, or we could just go bet on sporting events.
Or we could just go hunting.
We could go hunting.
In the common.
Yeah.
Have you ever gone hunting?
No.
Would you?
No. I mean, I guess I don't go hunting. I mean, I've killed animals. I shot a squirrel when I was like 16.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I tried to trap them, I remember. Never successfully, though.
Yeah. I killed a frog once.
You did?
Yeah, but then
it's
I was
a common
like,
thing, especially for young boys.
It's
fucked up, but it's common.
We were like out camping, and a friend had a pellet gun, and
Yeah.
You start shooting beer cans, and then you start shooting animals, and then I was kind of like, that was kind of pointless. I just took a life for no point.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's a really good predictor of future kind of psychopathy.
And why?
Well, no. I'm sorry. I mean, when people do that as a young kid in a sort of repeated and insistent way.
Yeah.
Like torturing animals. Like if there's like a young boy who's like getting really into it as kind of like a habit, going out and kind of like burning grasshoppers and this kind of like sadistic cruelty to animals.
Yeah.
You actually sometimes see that as a pattern.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I don't have a citation for this, I think it's, for obvious reasons, tends to be more common in young boys. But I believe I've read that it's a good predictor of future serial killers and psychopaths of that kind of nature.
Interesting. Yeah, there's been a story about there's probably a cat serial killer in London the police are concerned about.
A serial killer cat?
Yeah. No, not a cat serial killer. It's a human who's going around killing cats.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's
and mutilating them.
No shit.
Yeah.
How many cases so far?
I don't know. I mean, I imagine it'd be a lot to get the police to care, right? Like, but there's presumably someone going around London getting their rocks off, mutilating cats, and a lot of them aren't strays; they're just pet cats.
Damn, that's fucked up. I don't really like cats like a lot of people love cats. I don't dislike them. Arya kind of wants to get one, but I don't want to get one. But we have two that hang out on this roof right here.
Yeah.
And they're cool shit. I really like having them around. Kind of like I like their presence. I just don't want to have to take care of them, and I don't want them in the house. But that's just because I'm a fucking Grinch.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's sad to hear that someone's killing cats. Is that a common thing, like serial killing of animals?
I don't know. I just remember seeing this in the news a couple of mornings. I wrote it a couple of times over the last couple of months. Again, if we had an intern, we could look this kind of stuff up. So let's get some money here, Dr. Murphy.
Yeah, well, once this podcast blows up and I have a massive audience, probably gonna have sponsors coming at me, and I'm gonna have to think about how I want to play that.
Yeah,
part of me, the bigger part of me says I want to have no sponsors ever, because I hate that shit, and I think it's stupid, and I think it just contaminates the feel of everything and the effect that it has. But part of me is like, if there's some way to milk rich people for like money, I might want to try to come up with it. But part of me thinks I'm just gonna start a bunch of online businesses this summer.
Oh yeah.
And if one of them blows up, then fuck it, I'll do whatever I want.
What, like selling ebooks and stuff, or what?
No, I had this one business idea. Do you want to hear about it?
Sure. What is it?
So wealthy people have a lot of money, but the one thing that they typically don't have is like meaning in their life. And often, people who are really wealthy, or a good fraction of people who are highly wealthy, the real proper sort of, the real sort of 0.0, let's say 0.05%. There's a good fraction of that 0.05% that have really shitty kind of interpersonal, mental lives. And so there's this sort of trend where mercenary social scientists from different fields will kind of use their academic credibility to make these little like boutique kind of private consultancy type businesses where they basically sell their academic social science knowledge to different types of people or organizations. So for instance, this is common among, I've seen this, like anthropologists have done this. Like I saw recently this anthropologist woman with a PhD, really brilliant woman, who has this kind of like boutique consultancy. She does like the anthropology and the sociology of fashion. And she has this sort of little business basically where she sells herself as kind of like the personal stylist and kind of life coach for people who want to become more attractive and want to know how to dress and know how to interact with people to maximize their their social capital, basically. So there's this sort of move to basically use your academic knowledge and your academic credibility to make these like little boutique consultancies where you basically sell people your knowledge as service.
Yeah.
In a way that's not just kind of like the traditional form you would think of academics going into private industry and like working for a big engineering firm or something like that. It's this more smaller scale online kind of boutique consultancy for like lifestyle needs, basically. And I think it's ridiculous and pretty dumb for the most part, and I find it just offensively like mercenary, personally. But I was thinking something that I could do is start such a boutique consultancy type thing where I exploit wealthy people, which to me would feel less mercenary and less ugly and stupid. And so here's the proposal. It would be for wealthy people who have a shitload of money but have no meaning in their life and hate themselves, and because pursuing money and making a lot of money is highly correlated with having like meaningless lives and being like a shitty person and not knowing how to deal with all of those emotions and baggage that come from that. So basically, I would sell really, really rich people life coaching on how to find meaning in their life, basically, and how to feel like a good person. So basically, I would teach really wealthy people how to, for instance, have a free-spirited conversation with their friends and family in a way that doesn't feel exploitative or doesn't feel alienated. So basically, I would be exploiting the alienation of wealthy people and be I would present myself as a social scientist who knows, who's an expert on the dynamics of alienation and disalienation and meaning in one's life and feeling, psychology, political psychology, things like this. I would market myself as that, and I would charge wealthy people exorbitant sums for this kind of like bullshit package of self-help services. What do you think?
I think if you're gonna do that, you shouldn't put this podcast online.
Well, no, because I actually don't think so, because I think wealthy people are so preoccupied and busy and kind of stupid in some sense that I can actually be totally transparent in what I'm saying right now. I can even say this to them transparently. So if I'm hired by a wealthy person to do this, I will tell them, look, I think you're an idiot. I think that you live a shitty life. I think that you're a bad person. I think that you are doing everything totally wrong. But what I'm selling them, no, listen, seriously, what I'm selling them is that radical, complete, unmitigated honesty that they can't get from anyone else around them, because everyone around them tends to be psychophants. So basically what I'm saying right now, kind of mocking this idea and kind of belittling the rich people that I want to exploit, is I can be perfectly consistent and transparent now and in this business venture, because I would say the same thing to their face, and they would pay me for it because it would really help them to know these things.
All right, I say you do it.
All right, there you go. That's just one of my ideas. I kind of have a few other ideas, like harebrained ideas.
What other ideas you got?
Well, that's enough for now. That's the most sort of worked out one. Okay. I'll let you know the other ones as I work them out. But my ideas, I mean, this is what startup people do, right? They just launch, like serial entrepreneurs, right? They just launch one startup after another, and you just wait until one catches on, and then you're good. So I might kind of try to play with that model of living and of trying to toy with possible alternative pathways to economic self-sufficiency alongside, or potentially, one day maybe instead of academia, if academia doesn't, it's nice to have your options open, I think.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Sounds like a lot of work.
Well, the thing with the business plan I have about exploiting rich people, I think it won't be that much work. Do you want to know the way I'm going to start it? It's going to be my first test drive of it.
All right. I'm
gonna make a website that launches this boutique consultancy, and it's gonna make it look like it's a thing, but I didn't actually do any work for it yet. All I do is make a website, but it looks like there's this big, organization, machinery behind it. And then the first product I'm gonna offer is an ebook on basically pitching this idea about how wealthy people with meaningless lives can totally find themselves through my unique method. And the ebook is gonna cost £500. It's just going to be like 100 pages, but of specific tips and tricks of how wealthy people can revolutionize their lives and find meaning in disalienation. Yeah. It's going to be like about 100 pages. It's going to have some
How many words?
I don't know. We'll figure that out later. But basically, here's the thing, because you said it sounds like a lot of work. Here's why it's not a lot of work. I'm gonna put it on the market first without having written any of it, without having even thought about it. So basically, I could do this in one day. Put up this website, put up this product, charge £500 for it, or maybe even more, maybe £1,000, depending on how much, depending on what part of the wealthy elites I want to try to cut into. And then I will only have to write the damn thing if people actually order it. It's brilliant. So if I get orders, then yeah, I'll do the work, and it'll be really, really remunerative. But if no one orders it, then I didn't have to waste time doing any work.
But won't they expect it right away if they buy it?
Yeah, well, if I'm being paid £1,000 to write it, I'll fucking drop everything and write it. What do you think? Is it good?
Yeah, do it. I'm curious to see how it goes.
Cool.
Yeah, that seems to be the model. I was like looking at books in Foyle's bookstore yesterday, and there's a whole shelf. There's kind of that 4-hour workweek guy.
Oh,
yeah. There were like 4 or 5 other. There's like this whole genre. There's like the guys who do Brewdog.
What is that?
It's like a beer. It's like a British. It's like an American style craft beer, but done in Britain. And they call themselves Punk, and they did Punk Equity. Yeah. And so they basically did crowdfunding to get their thing off the ground. Okay. And so it's like a book about how to do that. There's another guy who's basically like, this other book was, I don't know who it was by, but it's basically like, here are all the steps, and it was basically exactly what you're saying, like create a website, sell an ebook, become a consultant, and they all these steps in terms of how to identify your skills and what your niches are and all that.
So they have a book about that?
They have like, there's a shelf, like all of this. There's a
whole
shelf.
It's a whole industry,
Foyles,
actually.
right?
Yeah,
it's a whole industry. I mean, probably the most famous guy is that 4-hour workweek guy, because that's his model too, right?
Yeah, that guy. I know the guy you're talking about.
So I got a bit cynical, because when I look at all these people, and actually I know a guy who actually does this. He calls it like self-improvement, whatever. And he's got a blog, and he's doing something very similar, got a blog, and he's selling an ebook and goal setting or whatever. And I'm like, it seems to me all of them, their product is like how to get rich doing this, right? So it's basically they're all selling an ebook on how to get rich doing an ebook. I don't see. I mean, I guess personal trainers kind of do it a bit, but I don't see many people implementing this. Well, actually,
that's a good point.
Actually, one person who does really good, actually has done really well on this is like, do you know this blog The Professor is in?
No.
So she was like, I'm not sure what her story was, but she was basically an academic, and she started blogging and offering advice to academics, basically like grad students how to get tenure track jobs and people on tenure track how to get tenure.
Yeah.
And now she basically became like a career coach for academics. Mm. And apparently she got so successful at that she's not an academic anymore. She's full time.
I've seen that person. I forgot her name.
Book and all that. So I guess that's like, so if you have like actual advice in a market, I guess.
So who pays her? Like, who are her clients?
Well, I think like her specialty is actually trying to coach people on the tenure track, and she basically does 3 things. So as near as I can tell, you go look at her website. It's like, grad students need to get jobs. So what do you have to do for the job market? People on tenure track, what do you do to get tenure? And people who don't get tenure, what do you have to do to transition out of tenure, out of like an academic to something else, right? And that you actually think about it, that's actually like those are like good key career stages. And she's kind of a tough love person. She's not like much bullshit, right?
Yeah.
Because like, she's basically got to do this, and this, and but steps, and she actually, like, one of her services would be like holding you accountable. If you're like, I'm going to write an article, like part of her thing, I guess she'll call you every week and say, show me your pages. What have you actually written this week? And what time have you cleared off to do this? And what are the actual obstacles to you achieving these goals, right? So, and I actually imagine tenure's kind of, like, its actual value, just in terms of like career income, is massive, right? It's job for life or unemployment, with basically overeducated unemployment, when you probably, I don't really know of many cases you would get denied tenure and get back on another tenure track job. It's kind of up or out.
Unless you go from the US to the UK, which some people do.
I
can think of one person who's done that.
Yeah, I can think of a couple who've done that. But yeah, I guess so. I guess you go US, UK. I mean, I certainly know some people, but basically the point's that like it's, you're either up or out, pretty much, right?
Yeah.
And like, moving to the UK is not an easy move.
Yeah,
right?
no.
You've got to basically have to have a family situation that allows you to do that, which a lot of people don't, right?
Yeah.
So, But yeah, no, I mean, if you think about that, that's like a definite need.
Yeah,
right?
that's cool. That's cool. Yeah, I mean, I think for me, just personally, with my own kind of interests and politics and kind of personal, like, cultural mission,
Uh-huh.
I would never start a business doing something where I sort of sell services to kind of like people in my milieus or sort of beneath me in the, you know, the status quo, like, social hierarchy. Just because I find, like, to me that's offensive and repulsive. Personally, I'm just not interested in doing that. But I would be open to the idea of business ventures on the side that are specifically about exploiting people wealthier than me. Yeah, and I think there's a significant difference between those two.
I'd say most of those service things target people who, I don't know, like, so personal trainers are another good example, right? So it's not web-based necessarily, although I guess there could be some, right? But that's a person who, you know, their annual income's not that high, but
yeah.
But their market, they've got to target people who have disposable income, right? People aren't going to pay £30 an hour unless they're in a situation where they can afford £30 an hour kind of thing, right? So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So what else?
In terms of what? Well, what should
Whatever.
I do?
What else is on your-
if I
what
were to
else is on
spend
your
the summer? So now you have to advise me. If I were to spend the summer
Nice.
designing my own business, and since you've already got the niche market of fuck the rich people as your business, I would never want to move into your market because we're friends and we're just not gonna do that. But so given that you've got that market cornered, what other market? I don't feel like writing another book on. Here's a book on how to get rich. Selling books on how to get rich.
Right.
So
well, that's a good
do?
point you made, that most of those people who, this, like, industry of how to be a good entrepreneur and how to get rich, mostly what they're selling, like, they don't actually give you tips on how to make a meaningful, effective business. Their main reference point is precisely launching yourself as a kind of teacher of making businesses.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually kind of funny. Like, back pre-internet, so I used to really read comics a lot when I was a kid, and I remember, like, there'd always be these ads in the back, like classified ads. I remember one was like, send us a book on send us $100 and we'll give you a book on how to make $1 million, right? And I remember I was telling my dad, oh, can I have $100? I remember, like, asking him, right? And my dad was like, no. And I was like, but Dad, it's going to cost us to make $1 million, we'd be rich, right? My dad's like, no, it's a scam. The guy's going to send you a book saying, sell a book.
Right, yeah.
For $100, tell people they're going to be rich. I'll have to sell 10,000 of these, right?
It is a little bit like that, isn't it?
Right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm not... I mean, in certain sense, I actually agree that a lot of it could work, right? Like, actually, the internet makes it scalable, and you have to do it in such a way that people don't feel ripped off because you'll be exposed and all that. But there's a way in which, you know, Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Work Week. What's his business? It's him selling the 4-Hour Work Week book, right? And so, like, you know, I don't know what other niche stuff you could do.
Well,
right?
you know what, though, actually, I mean, because I've looked into, I sort of sometimes come across these people and their writings and sometimes even their podcasts. Like, I've been listening to just a shitload of podcasts because I've been getting really into them.
Yeah.
So Tim Ferriss has a podcast. I've come across it. I've listened to a few of them, I think. So I sort of dabble in all these different podcast sort of worlds, and that world of sort of the self-help guru, basically, it is largely around, it tends to sort of revolve around entrepreneurship and that kind of type of venture. But what they're really peddling is more like life coaching type things and sort of like life skills. So it's like the kinds of things, the vocabulary that they use is like life hacking and biohacking and so, like, that's kind of and to be fair, I mean, a lot of it is super fucking corny and just kind of like politically and culturally very kind of blind and shallow, but the basics of the kinds of things that they peddle are actually quite useful sometimes. And I mean, I've definitely gotten some things from those types of people and those types of sites. Like, for instance, I actually when I tried to get into speed reading, for instance, because I've always been a slow reader, and it's starting to really piss me off because with all this shit I have to do now, I've been really upset about how little time I've had to read. So, and how much little reading I've accomplished in the past few years. So I recently have wanted to really get serious about learning how to read faster. And when I looked up, I went online to look up, you know, stuff about speed reading, how to do it. The first page that popped up for me was a fucking blog post by that guy Tim Ferriss.
Okay.
So by looking into the stuff that he's doing, people like that are actually are kind of sharing useful, kind of really actionable tips and tricks for like just how to kick yourself into gear in different ways.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like what they're kind of explicit about that.
Yeah.
That's kind of like what they're offering. And to be fair, I mean, his little blog post that I read was one of the things I followed just to like help start speed reading, and it worked. So like what they're getting really good, what they do, I think, from what I can tell, is they try to like figure out all the different kind of cognitive and behavioral kind of efficiencies that people can pursue, but that the average person doesn't.
Yeah.
And then they just kind of like package these insights as like life-saving magical tricks to make yourself powerful and use it, and then you use these things to start businesses or something. But the how you go from these little self-help tricks to having a successful business is kind of this like big black box or question mark, which I don't. That's where I think the kind of Ponzi scheme comes in, because they don't actually have tips or tricks or knowledge on how to identify a useful kind of gap in the market, for instance. Like that's actually where...
Actually, the book I was looking at yesterday actually does. It's got like little exercises you can do and stuff. I can't remember what it's called.
For finding like entrepreneurship opportunities?
Well, that book was exactly doing the model you're saying. So it's basically set up a web page, and then ebook, online course, and perhaps consulting, and kind of like offer a suite of stuff. And then you also have to blog a fair bit and whatever. But it's also like, what are your actual existing skills, right? So,
well, that's the hard part, right? You have to have something valuable to offer, right?
Well, I mean, part of me is like laughing because I'm like, well, actually we do, right? Like in a certain sense, that's what a lecturer is, right?
Oh yeah, no, yeah, some people do, but the thing is that if you have valuable skills that you can market, then it's not too much of a puzzle or an issue to go and do that, right? Like these types of people and their projects they make themselves sound like, and they often say, they use language like this, that sort of anyone can do it, right? That it's like this is like a workflow for any random old person to make a successful business, but really that's not the case. Like you have to already have valuable assets that you can market, and that's the difficult. That's like that's the whole puzzling, difficult kind of cultural and political question is how if you're into like capitalism and you're into markets and shit in the first place, which I'm not, but if you are, the real puzzle is sort of how do people from different walks of life, and especially from lower socioeconomic status and that kind of shit, how do you make a successful business that way? Tim Ferriss has no fucking tips for that, I don't think.
Yeah. Although, part of me is like, I'm not sure how like new that is, right? If you get into something, like, so like, all right, so I've been like doing this kettlebell training with this guy for like 18 months, right?
Oh,
and
cool.
like, it's been good. And he's like obviously got these certs and stuff, but we kind of like, I reached a point where I'm okay, now I know how to do everything, so it's like I don't need to like hire him for lessons anymore. But then I was kind of like, well, what's next? He's like, well, you could start training for a certification, right? So if I really wanted to, I could now go. I have to like train, because one of the things that's interesting about this, like a lot of like the strength and athletic certifications, it's like they now put in place like minimum strength and standards. So part of the certification, you learn the technique and how to coach, but part of it's also you've got to be at a certain level. So for the kettlebell thing, you've got to be able to do like a 32 kilogram kettlebell set of skills, which is so it's a no. Your strength's got to reach a pretty serious standard. So he's like, oh, you can just follow this training program for like another year and then go take this course, pay £1,000, and then you're certified kettlebell instructor.
Are you interested in that?
No. Right? So, I mean, I'm interested in like personally getting stronger or getting better at that skill and stuff, but like then you got a certification, then you could set up a website, then I could go around and like, coach people, right? Yeah. Or he could refer extra clients to me or something, right? Like it's kind of, like a lot of stuff has a model like that, right? So, yeah, I don't think it's just that. Like you could, like it's certainly possible to do, and it's like you just need to get into something a lot. Is kind of what I'm saying, right?
Right, that's interesting.
That's not really all that new from like piano lessons or any kind of musical instrument, right? So, I think a lot of people can turn their hobbies into whatever, right? I mean, the simple fact for me is like I just basically reached the associate professor level. And the salary there is nice, and the work security is very good. And so part of me is like, why? And he asked, would you want to do it? I'm like, yeah, sure. But then what? I want to book another 10 to 20 hours a week, charging people. Yeah, sure. So let's say I did that, £30 per hour, 10 hours a week. It's another £300. It's nice money, another £1,200 a month. But then think of all the extra work that would have to go into that, right? And you start thinking about all that. Plus you have to deal with people all the time. And I'm like, I basically have an inbox that's piled up with student complaints over the weekend. And so I'm like, would I want another stream of whininess, right?
You're right. It would have to really be worth it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not against people doing it. If you want to do it, say go for it. But to me, I'm like, actually, that kind of gig economy is like the exact opposite of the academic economy. And what's appealing to me about the academic economy, while it still lasts, it's probably going to be destroyed like next week. But while it still exists, it's like great job security, great income, right? Compared to you're basically in the middle class if you have a lecturership position, and basically pretty solid guaranteed thing, and massive amount of autonomy, right? Apart from lecturing and the few meetings we have to go to in a week, like we can completely set our own hours, and as long as we get the work, it's not like you still have to do a lot of work, but as long as you get the work done, and you can really self-direct your work, right? And so for me, I already have all of that, and so when Tim Ferriss comes and sells the 4-hour work week, I'm like, I've already got what you're selling, and I've actually got it better, right? It's kind of my attitude.
No, it's a good point. Although there is some stuff in his kind of his suggested sort of approach that could kind of perhaps be useful, that I've kind of looked into. I mean, I haven't studied what he says very closely. No, I don't. But I've seen his stuff online, and like I said, I've just been kind of perusing these cultures a fair bit lately, just for whatever reason. And so, for instance, this idea of getting a virtual assistant. I've been talking about this forever. Yeah. I've been joking about this for a while. But I still don't see why we don't get virtual assistants to do sort of all kinds of petty tasks. I kind of want to get one, to be honest. So they're from what I've read, they're good for having people do sort of the mundane everyday tasks, like things like booking flights, booking train tickets. But also you can have them write emails and stuff like that. So I'm kind of thinking about that. I feel like there's this sort of normative expectation in academia that sort of you do everything personally, right? But I don't see why we have to do that. I think we could outsource a lot of our tasks to virtual assistants, save a lot of time, and it's not that expensive.
Well, some of it is. All right, so like that link you gave me for auto booking appointments. Yeah, that's been pretty good.
Yeah, right. I get credit for that.
Yeah, nice. That's good stuff. It's a good fun. I think what's funny is I've noticed the economists have all started doing it too. So I wonder if they stole our idea, or did you steal it from them?
I don't know.
You ever notice? I know because I did it a lot. You did it for a while. I did it last semester, and this semester all the economist profs they put it up. And what's funny is they've also taken away their posted office hours.
Yeah.
They're just if you want to book me, book this. Yeah. So that's pretty funny. But so that's kind of good.
Now I'm gonna be if you want an appointment with me, please contact my virtual assistant at this address. But people would rebel against that. That would be seen as kind of.
Okay, so what's funny about that is everywhere else I've been, even when I was a postdoc at UBC, that stuff was done for me. It's only Southampton where you have to do it on your own. Right? So it's kind of we're in a university that doesn't offer that kind of support. So I think it's kind of British university minimal support thing. Yeah. Right? So that's again, the better the for me, Minnesota, when I was a grad student, it'd be just tell us what books you're assigning for the class, and we'll order you personally desk copies. And if you need readings photocopied, leave it here, and the office staff will copy it for you. And if you need a flight, that'll get booked for you. All that stuff's done for you. Yeah. Right? I think getting a personal assistant's fine. It's just kind of, to me, it's kind of interesting observation. I noticed when I got a smartphone, it kind of just dawned on me after about 2 months that, actually the university's not paying for this. And actually, I bet you 60% of my data is tied up on university functions, right? Just answering email or checking email or staying in touch, right? And then someone like Alice, who's a university administrator, she actually gets a separate university phone, right? So, yeah, part of me's like, yeah, it's a good idea to do that, but part of me's also like, actually, you would be paying out of your own pocket to do something that university should be doing. It's kind of a labor issue, right? So, you know, I guess your personal stuff, you want to do that, it's fine. But part of me is also, I mean, maybe, and the university probably won't ever do that, but if profs adopted that strategy, they'd then just be giving the university, you basically be paying the university to do your job for you. Like another cost is added on, right? So.
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah.
Could we go back to kettlebells? Since you mentioned it.
Yeah.
No, the reason I want to talk about it is because so I've never done any kind of weight training, and I've never really been interested in it. Like I've just never cared about having muscles or like being muscular or how my body looks or anything like that. But now as I'm kind of just like getting a little bit older, I kind of am getting well, in part it's just because, you know, we spend so much time kind of sitting down and shit like that I find myself just trying to do a lot of things that just involve kind of moving and just kind of staying fit. So I'm kind of getting a little bit more interested in different kinds of fitness just to kind of maintain health. And so I've kind of been getting curious about kettlebells, and I want to ask your opinion about it because basically here's my reasoning for why I might want to do kettlebells. Because like I said, I don't really give a shit about weight training. I don't want to go to gyms. I don't want to like lift weights. I don't really care about being muscular and shit like that.
Yeah.
But what I do find myself doing is like little things kind of like around the house, just between, or in the office or whatever, like between work things.
Yeah.
So I have this like chin up bar, you know, I'll like do a few pull-ups, and I'll often just kind of stretch like out of nowhere.
Yeah.
So I'm into the idea of just having something around the house that I can just like pick up, like I have a heavy thing I can pick up and do a few things with it throughout the day here and there randomly. Yeah. Would that be a good thing to do? Is a kettlebell a good solution for that? Could I just get like one kettlebell and would that be good?
Yeah. No, it's designed for that.
Oh really? Right. There's not like a big science to it. I don't have to get like a kit of like 10 of them.
I have 3, but it's more like the strong. So a couple of things, right? And so this is like a lot of stuff I learned from working with this guy for a year. You could interview him. He would love to be on your podcast.
I don't know if I want to go into the whole like nutrition fitness world, but to be honest, I am kind of getting just kind of sincerely curious and interested in sort of nutrition science and fitness science and stuff like that. So maybe if he's cool, I'll talk with him.
Yeah, you'd have a chat. Cool. All right. So I guess so 3 things. Yeah, I'm like you. Like I was taught. I don't know if were you ever like taught how to work out at a gym or not really. So like I was kind of just taught by like fit guys, like guys who were buff. They'd drag me along to the gym and I'd work out with them. And I kind of follow a plan for a while and whatever. Sometimes I get pretty fit and just life gets in the way, I get fat again. But, so the model that I was taught is actually the bodybuilding model initially, right? And so it's there's actually an interesting history of this. So, like, most gym culture in North America and Europe that takes off in the 80s and 90s is really built around the bodybuilding movement, right? And so it's like Arnold Schwarzenegger is actually one of the big drivers of this, right? And so the goal in bodybuilding is just to like be very attractive and develop a very muscular physique, right? And so it places a strong emphasis on what's called hypertrophy, just building your muscles. And so obviously bigger muscles, you're going to be stronger than if you didn't have bigger muscles, but it's actually not necessarily the best way to train if you have other goals. Right? And so I didn't know this when I started with the kettlebell thing. I just kind of I've been basically moved to England, got like another fit kick, kind of followed what it is. I knew a guy who was like training with the US Olympic curling team and kind of got his program, kind of like a simplified version of that. And that was actually pretty good for losing weight, but it placed a lot of emphasis on something different entirely. It was like muscular endurance. So basically doing like 20 reps of stuff, like really high reps, low weight, and doing circuits. So you move from exercise, and do like a full body workout in 45 minutes and get really tired. And I wanted to learn how to do 2 movements, and my big problem is that basically any commercial gym, they just put you back on this 8 to 12 rep full body. I do bicep curls, triceps, like work each muscle group, and it's like a clear progression. I'd had that in the past, and I'd also found that gym personal trainers were basically shit for a whole bunch of reasons. So I didn't like them. But there were kettlebells in gyms, and I kind of muck around with them, like not knowing what I'm doing. And then the other movement I got into was, I saw a lot of people doing deadlifts over here. It seems like there's more of a deadlifting culture in the UK than the US. And I wanted to do that.
For our listeners, could you say what is a deadlift?
So a deadlift is basically, there's a large barbell, and you bend over and you pick it up. And it's basically what it is.
So it's like the simplest lift possible.
It's the simplest lift possible. In theory, it's also the lift that you can lift the most weight with. So it's basically, in certain sense, it's just kind of, it's called the deadlift because you're basically picking up a weight from a dead stop up with your hands up to waist height and then dropping it.
No, it's called the deadlift because that's how they used to pick up dead bodies.
Is that why it's called a deadlift?
No, I'm just kidding.
I don't know. Anyway, so people were doing that, and I wanted to do that, but well, actually, what I did is I tried it on my own and jacked up my back.
Oh, really?
And I was like, yeah, no, you can. If you don't know what you're doing, you can jack up your back. So I tried and like pull the back muscles. Like that's not a good idea.
That's why they say lift with the knees, not with the back, right? Is that what it was?
I guess in a certain sense, yeah. There's a lot more to it. It's actually like a pretty tricky lift. So basically, I found this guy online. I was like, okay, I want to try this. And this guy's like, I do kettlebells, and he had like a little kettlebell class, and I went and learned. And then I kind of said, I want to learn how to do these things. And so he basically taught me. And so a couple things I learned from him. So one is that training for strength's very different than training for aesthetics. Right. And it's actually a completely different set of things. So actually you do very few lifts, but you lift very heavily. Right? Whereas what I was doing initially was like, well, initially if you do like a bodybuilding program, you do like a different part of your body every day. You do 8 to 10 reps, 3 to 5 sets, and you try to work to failure. You basically try to get to the point where you can't lift anymore, and then that'll tear your muscles, and they'll get bigger the next time, right? So you stress yourself and build it, right? Whereas strength training is done in like Olympic lifting and strongman lifting and power lifting. Like these, basically, the sport is how much can you lift,
right?
And there they never lift to failure except in the event itself. And so for them, it's kind of like people who train for marathons. People who do like a power lift, they'll spend like 12 weeks out and they'll be, okay, I'm just going to lift this. And so it's a very different system.
Right.
Yeah.
So which one are you aiming for?
I'm not doing any competitive thing.
But I mean, what is your goal for your training?
Right? Well, now I'm just like mucking around. I don't really know what my goal is.
So just basic kind of health?
Not really. I don't know. Like I just kind of basically I wanted to learn how to do a skill.
Oh, okay.
Right? And do you ever like just want to learn how to do something?
Sure.
Right? And so I mean, this is getting back to like the business thing. Here's a guy who actually, it's like a non-sleazy thing. He actually has a skill that I want.
Right.
Right. I mean, there's a bit of desire to lose a bit of weight, but also I just wanted to learn how to do kettlebells and deadlift. I just wanted to do something different at the gym than what I've been taught.
Cool.
Basically, I got bored.
I feel like my interest in it is just, I guess two things, like just basic kind of body maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, I read things about how like once you turn 40 and you kind of from then on, it gets harder to sort of build muscle mass and that kind of stuff. And so I'm not interested in like having big muscles or looking good or something, but I know that with aging, you need to have muscles and stuff like that. Yeah. So I feel like I should probably, starting now, kind of take muscle, like just building basic muscle for basic kind of health purposes a little bit more seriously than I ever have. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing, and that's not even the main thing I'm interested in. The main thing I'm interested in, I think, is just feeling really good, right? Like, and I think that obviously and just kind of feeling like powerful and energetic and being able to do mad shit in a day and keep a good mood and this kind of stuff all the time, just to generally feel energized and powerful. For that, you obviously need like a certain regimen of physical fitness, and I've been getting pretty good with running and that kind of stuff and kind of basic everyday fitness, but I don't do anything that has to do with kind of muscle building or weights. So I was thinking I might just throw a kettlebell into the mix. Wait, is it kettlebell or ball? Kettlebell, right. Okay, I had that right. So on a more practical note then, for someone like me with my interests and goals, which I suspect there are a lot of people like me who like don't really want to get muscular, don't really give a shit about that, and don't want to go to a gym, don't want to do serious weight training, but would like to have like a little thing around the house to kind of do to just kind of keep their muscle mass going or whatever, and for general feeling good. throughout the day and week or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
what would you recommend? Like, what is like a quick step-by-step thing I could do? Like, if I were to buy one kettlebell,
Mm-hmm.
like what weight should I get, and then what should I do on what kind of schedule?
You should hire someone who knows how to do kettlebell instruction.
Really, is it
I'll
that
teach you.
it's that serious?
It's a tricky movement. Okay. One of the things that's funny is I kind of was fucking around with kettlebells gym, watching what other people were doing, and basically everyone at the gym has no idea how to do kettlebells.
Oh, really?
Like no idea. They basically see it and they think it's like a normal weight, and they'll do like a bicep curl or a shoulder press or something. And like the point of a kettlebell is something very different. And so there's 6 core movements. And actually, if you go online and look up kettlebell workouts, most people are doing bullshit. There's basically 6 core movements. The actual style is called Russian hardstyle kettlebell training. And it's kind of like, I guess the Russians have been doing it for like a century. And it was before like modern gyms took over with like dumbbells and barbells, like the kettlebell was basically like old cannonballs reshaped and used for lifting weights for soldiers in the Russian army. So it was kind of like an earlier style of strength training. The 2 basic ones are what's called the kettlebell swing. Have you ever seen this?
No.
So you basically take the ball, the kettlebell, you grab it's got basically a kettlebell is like a large heavy ball of metal, and it's got like a handle attached to it, right? So you basically grab it by your handle, throw it back between your legs, and then whoop it up to chest height.
Okay.
And it takes a lot of time to get the motion right, because you're basically doing a very explosive motion, and the force you have to generate to get the chest height also means that thing's flying at a really fast velocity both directions. So if you don't have control over it, a lot of bad things can happen.
Okay, I guess it's not quite as simple as I thought. I kind of imagine I could just get one, like put it in the corner over here, and every now and then when I walk by it, just kind of lift it a few times.
No. It took me working with this guy. It took me a good, and he wouldn't even let me do swings for like the first 6 weeks. We'd meet like once a week, and he'd like, yeah, you're not ready to do swings yet.
Oh, okay,
There's a set of like preparatory movements you have to learn, and so one of them's the swing. The other one's this thing called a Turkish get up, where you lie on your back, put the kettlebell directly over you, and then you work your way up to holding the kettlebell overhead standing. And it's a series of movements you walk through, but at all times you're holding the bell over your head. Wow. Right, and so again, you've got like the lightest you could possibly use is 8 kilograms, so that's like 20 pounds, and like the one I work with now is like a 20 or 24 kilograms. So nice. It's like it's kind of cool, and it's really intense.
It sounds like you also need a lot of space, I guess.
You actually don't need a lot of space. So I actually do it at home. I was actually talking to another guy about this yesterday, and he's like, what if you drop the kettlebell? And I was like, I haven't dropped a kettlebell since I first started doing it. But you actually need a space. That's why he just does it at this large gym. So, I mean, if you wanted to get into it, I'd say go talk to that guy.
Cool. And sounds too complicated now.
Maybe it depends what you want, right? It's like basically you probably he's also a bit particular because it's his business. So he basically would say, well, you have to sign up for a 3-month package with me, and he'd meet you 3 times a week. And
that's pretty intense.
He's pretty good. He's also like, one of his things he said is he also do nutrition coaching. Like, I'm not so into that. He's like, no, I don't do, like his line to me was, I'm not gonna do. He's like, nutrition's half of it, and basically if you're eating like crap and then training with me and not getting results, it's because it's like he said, 9% of the time it's because your nutrition shit, and so I don't want you training with me, not eating properly, and then whatever. So it's kind of, he'll give you nutrition coaching too. So, I could give you that guy. It's turned into an ad for this guy. But
that's cool. It's interesting.
So those are the 2 core movements. There's other ones on top of that are more advanced. The only one I haven't mastered yet is the snatch. So it's still like, I've been doing it for like 18 months now. I still haven't like done all the movements.
Interesting. No, it's super interesting. I mean, I think I just want something simpler. I mean, the sort of health regimen that I'm sort of working out for myself, which I am actually kind of getting into, kind of taking it seriously, just like sleep, what I eat, when I sleep, the exercise I do. Yeah. I'm basically just trying to find the patterns of all of these things that are maximally effective for kind of my energy and mood and feeling great and being able to do mad shit throughout the day and feeling good throughout it all. But that requires the least amount of time and attention and complexity, basically. So maybe I would want it. Maybe could I just get like just like one or two barbells and just kind of like leave them on the table and like
Barbells
pick them.
or dumbbells?
What are the hand ones called?
Dumbbells.
Dumbbells. Could I just get like a couple of handbells and just pick them up every now and then?
All right, so here's what I've learned, because I used to do that, and that's how I used to think, is that if you want the most bang for the buck, you actually have to do the more advanced stuff, and that actually takes skill.
Shit.
If you want, like, and so what's funny is the reason most gym stuff doesn't work, most commercial gym stuff doesn't work, is because it's all very simple, and then and part of the reason it's very simple is that basically any idiot can walk into a gym and do it, and obviously gyms don't want people getting hurt, and so they make it very simple and relatively safe for them to do, right? But the problem is, like, if you're just doing like bicep curls, you're only working your bicep, basically. And so you're only working, and that's a pretty small muscle.
But you can do different things with them, right? Like I can hold a barbell or a dumbbell. What is it called?
A dumbbell.
Dumbbell is the hand one.
Yeah.
I could hold a dumbbell in all different kinds of ways.
Yeah.
I could hold it with my foot. I could lift my leg up with it on my foot. This kind of, like, I'm
Yeah.
sure. I mean, I don't know anything about this. I just imagine.
Yeah.
I imagine with one or two kind of heavy objects,
Uh-huh.
you could do a routine of movements with it that would just be doing basic kind of muscular upkeep.
Yeah, you could do that.
Is that
totally.
true?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so here's the funny thing. But if you want a program that's really simple, like the program I do right now is very simple. I never work out for more than 30 minutes in a day. I only do weights 3 days a week. And right now I'm doing 4 motions. So I'm trying to get a 1-arm push-up. I do the deadlift, I do the swing, I do the get-up. Right?
Cool.
And so they're all very simple, but they're all very... So there's what's called a focused or concentrated exercise versus a compound exercise, right? And so bicep curls focus. All it does is works your bicep. It isolates one muscle group. And so that's very popular in bodybuilding because you want to build up all your muscles and make them as big as possible. And also if you're trying to go out for a show, you may say, oh, my forearms aren't so big. So here's a very specific exercise for building up my forearms, right? All the ones I just listed, they're compounds. They use multiple muscles simultaneously. But in order to get bang for the buck, you've got to lift very heavy. Right? So you could do like bicep curls 10 pounds and just keep doing it at 20 and whatever and do as many reps as you want and get pretty toned there. Right? That's all you're doing. Whereas with a deadlift, you're basically working your entire body. If you do like a heavy deadlift where you're lifting your max, it's actually the most intense.
Oh, is that right? You're working all many muscles?
Okay, so the concentration is what's called the posterior chain, which basically means you're working all your muscles from your ankles to your shoulders simultaneously. But you actually are using everything. Your abs have to engage basically every muscle if you're lifting at max or close to max, like every muscle in your body has to engage.
And it's basically just in that squat movement. Like from going down in a squat,
so like
lifting up.
So Fridays I go and do deadlifts at this gym, and I just go in, I warm up, and I'll do 8 to 10 single lifts, and that's the workout, and I'm trashed at the end of it, right? And it's like there's a warm up process. So I'll do a couple rounds of warm up at lighter weights, but when I hit whatever my max weight is for the day, it's normally 8 to 10, and it's not reps. It's like all lift. So like on Friday, I was doing 110 kilograms, like lifting 110. I did that 10 times on a program called for. And I just like do one lift, go and approach it, do the technique perfectly, one lift, drop it, wait 2 minutes, come back, do it again. 10 times.
Cool.
That was it. Right? So basically, and it took me 20 minutes.
Well, this is interesting. I'm glad we talked about it because I was literally thinking I would just get a kettlebell.
Yeah.
Like a medium weight kettlebell and just like put it in the corner and pick it up every so often.
Yeah, no, I mean you can do different stuff, but it's like once you get the technique down, right, then you do it. And the other thing that's kind of weird is it's a simple movement, but the more you get into it, the more you get into the skill of it. And the more I find myself reading online and like obsessing over head position and stuff, right? Cool. And so yeah, it's kind of cool. But it depends if you're into it or not, right? So
yeah. Cool.
But I'd say the general rule of thumb is if you want something, not just like in sport or fitness or anything, but if you want to be efficient at something, that normally means you have to sink a lot of costs in at the front end, regardless of what that skill is. Right?
Makes sense.
Like if you want to, like I'm sure the same way too, right? Like you're an efficient writer. If someone asks you to write something, right? If someone asked me to write something, I could write 1,000 words of pretty decent prose in an hour, and I think most people could not do that. right? On like a pretty dense, because I invest a lot of time, right? Yeah. So if someone emails me something, or I can go into a classroom and lecture on Hobbes' theory of sovereignty, right, with basically no prep.
Right, because you've invested so much into it.
Yeah, because I invested 20 years in like knowing that topic, right? So it's the same thing. If you want like a really efficient exercise, then you have to invest time at the front end for the skill. But then once you know the skill, like to me, I'm like, okay, like you're asking what competition, like yeah, there's actually a whole world of powerlifting. And actually as a 40 plus powerlifter in England, I'm sure I'd go to a powerlifting meet. There's maybe, I don't know what, it's probably 30, 40 guys in Southampton. So it's like a small, it's unlike, let's say I sign up for a 5K where there'd be like 1,000 people running it. There's probably a handful of people who do it. I'd probably be at the low end of it, but I could still do it and be kind of part of the powerlifting clique and go to whatever meets. And there's a whole subculture around that.
Nice,
right?
Bro.
Huh?
Nice, bro.
Nice, bro.
I'm just joking.
Oh, about that. I mean, I'm sure you could, right? But and like, there's a whole, if you want to take that competitive or any other thing competitive, right? But I actually, for me, I'm like, I've got the skill now where I can just work on what I want to work on. And part of what I like about it is just, I don't think nobody cares what I lift, and it's just me.
Yeah.
Private goal.
Yeah.
Don't care. Not public.
Cool. I like it. Yeah. I support it.
You support what?
You.
Yeah.
And your,
so that's my advice.
Exercise routines. I support you whether you want to compete or not.
Yeah.
That would be cool if you joined the deadlift community. Yeah, my buddy Jonathan. Yeah, he's a pretty big deadlifter around here.
Or you could do, the place I train, it's also like CrossFit, so you could do CrossFit.
Oh yeah, that's like the big fad, right?
It's a big fad right now, yeah.
People seem to like it. No, I don't want to be a part of any kind of culture related to physical fitness person. I mean, I don't have anything against it by any stretch, but no, like I said, I want to find the routines that are quickest and easiest to achieve maximal kind of mood optimization and energy optimization.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of tinkering with different types of practices. Right now, I've been running for the past year, really, probably. Yeah. So I've been sticking with that pretty well. I've been running consistently, but I've been doing it totally different ways, basically like trying different routines, and I've been kind of reading up a bit on the pros and cons of sort of endurance running versus high intensity stuff. And I've kind of just been experimenting basically with different styles. And right now I've kind of been leaning more towards the kind of high intensity approach, because for a while I was trying to kind of do longer runs. I was basically building up, like I was training for something, even though I wasn't training for anything, on sort of just this idea, this premise of seeing how far I could run and being able to run long distances consistently. But I actually ended up not liking that, and it didn't work for me. One, because it takes too much time, and that sucks. But two, because I found that you feel good after you get back from like a long run, but I found that the next day, sometimes it had unpredictable effects in making me really stressed out. Yeah. Like the next day. Yeah. And I read about that, and I learned why that is, and that's because running is actually stressful as shit. Like it's literally technically stress. Like you're stressing your body like crazy. Yeah. And so there's like, I'm sure you're familiar with it because you know more about the stuff than I do, but there is this sort of literature, if you will, on how endurance running is actually not good for you, because you're basically just stressing your body. Yeah. And you can actually subject you. So what happens actually is you actually fill your bloodstream and stuff like that with like adrenaline and cortisol and this kind of stuff. And then that can sit in your body, and the next day you can be like really on edge because you've accumulated all of this stress from like your long run, right? So people now are saying, or at least from what I'm reading, there's a certain move to do short, intense running. This is the whole like high intensity interval sort of trend. But to me, that makes more sense, and also I'm just kind of practically attracted to it because it's like shorter, quicker, and easier. So now what I've been doing, I don't do long runs anymore. Now what I will just do is, for basically like just 2 or 3 times a week for like 20 minutes, I will just sprint up this big hill for as long as I can, as fast as I can. Yeah. And once I can't breathe or move anymore, then I'll just stop and I'll just walk until I can breathe again. And then I'll just go back to the bottom of the hill and then run up again. I'll just do that for 20 minutes basically. I do that 2 or 3 times a week for like 20 minutes. So it's quick and easy, and I feel fucking like crazy good after it because I'm like pumped up. And I just find that it doesn't have like unpredictably negative effects on me like later in the day or like the next day and that kind of shit. What do you think of that?
Yeah, there's a lot to it. Yeah, so so for not just running, but just general cardio principles, like high intensity training's kind of where it's at now.
Do you agree that's the better approach?
Well, I mean, so it depends on a couple of things, right? Like, what are your goals, right? Is always the big question. And then, like, if you were trying to run the half marathon, that wouldn't get you to the half marathon, right? Because you've also got to build up an aerobic base. I think if you just join like the Hampshire Running Club or one of the local running clubs, right? Like most running programs will vary from day to day, right? So you'll normally have like one long endurance run a week. Like it depends on what you're trying to do. Like serious runners, people are trying to run marathons and stuff. Like they'll often, like I'm sure like someone like Ingy should probably run 6 days a week, right? Maybe even 7. I know some people are really crazy and they'll do like 2 runs a day, right? But and just like people who are like serious marathon runners, they'll bank like 50, 60 miles a week and stuff like that. It's a bit crazy. But if you want to be running really good times and try and qualify for the Boston Marathon, you probably have to do that.
No, fuck that.
Yeah, no, it's like, it depends what you want, right? I think that, but most people doing that running, they also have different workouts. So they do what's called a tempo run, which they run at a shorter distance. So let's say they're targeting a marathon, they may run 5 miles at what their marathon pace is to get their body used to running at pace. They'll normally do one endurance run that's kind of like building out how long they can run, and then they'll also do some kind of strength interval thing. So one of the things you're doing there, that's called a hill repeat, where you'll go out and you'll run up and down a hill 10 times, 12 times,
Oh, that's
whatever.
a thing? That's cool.
This hill repeats...
I thought I invented it.
No.
Is it good?
Well, hill repeats actually aren't necessarily all-out sprints. They're just to build strength. So it's kind of, the idea is that there's increased resistance running up a hill, so doing that builds up your strength. There's also something called interval training, which is like basically you go to a track and you'd run around slowly twice and then sprint all out once around the track, or do 200 meters, then rest for 200 meters and just kind of do repeats that way. There's also this thing which I kind of like, it's called fartlek running. It was invented by the Swedes, I think. And it was just called speed play. And so actually what you're doing sounds a lot like speed play, but it's like you just go for your normal run.
But you take some speed first.
No, that'd be good. No, you just kind of go and like you'll basically say, okay, I'm gonna run to that tree 200 meters off, and like run faster to that tree, and then slow down again. And it's more like it's not done as regimented. It's a lot more fun in it, right?
Okay.
It kind of depends, like again, it's all like what your goals are, right? And so sometimes I think one of the things that's weird is that as exercise science has really colonized fitness and sport, right? Some of the fun or play element's been taken out of it. Right? And so like I actually did I did a half marathon maybe, what would it be now? 2010. So like 6 years ago, right? I did like a full program and stuck with it. It was fun. Ran a half marathon. I was pretty happy with that. But also it was like so programmed, right? You got a program and it's like run this distance, aim for this time, get a heart rate monitor, right? And you can get really into like the techie part of it, and that's fun. But it's like, I just wanted to finish a half marathon and do that. I'm not trying to win an Olympic medal in half marathon, right? And then like now I just run. I'll run. So basically 3 days a week I'll do like strength stuff, and then 3 days a week I'll just run. I just have a little route around the common. I don't even carry a watch anymore. And then when I feel like on a Saturday morning, I'll hop and do a park run. The park run Saturday morning? Yeah. That's like 5K, and that's fun. And you just show them your tag and I'm registered, so I got like a time and whatever. But it's more just like for fun, right? Okay, yeah. And not regimented. And then like running without a sense of time or goal or pace, I think is also just fun. You just kind of, then it's like, for me, then it becomes relaxing. And if some morning I don't feel strong, I'll just take a really easy jog, right? And if someday I'm feeling strong and I want to chug it and just burn it and go run as hard as I can, I'll run as hard as I can. And then if I start feeling winded, I'm like, okay, I can slow down now, right? I literally right now have apart from the park run, I really have no idea what pace I'm running. The park run's weird because it's so crowded. You can't really, like normally for me, I'll be in the park run, I'll start kind of middle of the pack, and you really can't get going until about a third of the way through, because it takes about a mile to clear for like the people to separate out to like their pace. Because it's so crowded, it's like you're kind of fighting around people going slow for the first bit, and then, which actually I find for me is kind of a good way to control my pace so I don't burn myself out. But just doing it for fun, right? And then seeing, oh, did I beat my time or not, or whatever. So
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a general rule that you have to always give yourself the liberty to fuck around with things and do things in different ways at different times, because that makes it fun, right? Whenever you over-regiment to anything, it just becomes an oppressive chore.
Yeah.
So yeah, I totally agree with that. Not to mention, you know, the historical kind of significance of games and playing.
Yeah.
That's typically fulfilled a lot of sort of the human fitness needs in some sense in the historical timeline. And as our sort of increasingly regimented kind of like modern differentiated society sort of crowds out time for that sort of thing. It's all the more important that we make like fun ways of doing things that are physical. Because I mean, especially if you look at things like, you know, like the obesity epidemic and that kind of stuff, like mass health, like just the various kinds of mass health problems associated with just kind of typical conventional kind of lifestyle routines. You know, a lot of that is due to the fact that sort of the natural ways of just having fun in life are less and less physical, right? And less, it has less and less to do with sort of sports playing in the community and playing games with kids and running around in fields and this kind of stuff. Like, I feel like that kind of stuff has been increasingly crowded out, right? Do you think that's just a hypothesis? Do you think that's a reasonable hypothesis that has to do with sort of the different kinds of declining health standards or health problems that people are having?
I don't know. I'm not even sure if the obesity epidemic's that big of an epidemic.
Oh, is that right?
Like, I here I'm way out of my field, right?
Me too.
But like when you talk to sociologists who study fat and fitness and all that, like, so I just remember there's a BBC article, like a Danish study I read last week, where it was like, whereas 30 years ago being overweight, so a BMI over 30 did shorten your life expectancy compared to someone who was under, now apparently you're actually better off to be not like morbidly obese, but obese.
Is that right?
Which is kind of weird, right?
I thought it was well documented to take off something like 7 years of lifespan.
Maybe. I mean, I don't. A lot of it's kind of weird. Like, I've got my cousin's like a GP, and like, actually, what's funny is I've got a cousin's GP, and I've got a friend who's a doctor, and like, their reaction to like public health risks is like they just kind of laugh. Like, one of my friends, she's just like, oh, you could, like, she'll just be like, oh, I'll be like, oh, can't take this drug, and this drug is contraindicated. She's like, oh, let's do that and take a bottle of vodka, right? She'll be like, she's like, the risks are so like the government's so interested in regulating for any risk whatsoever that actually the margin of risk is so high that as long as I'm doing something completely stupid like downing an entire bottle of paracetamol,
no, that's a good point.
Right?
That's a really good point.
You know, say only take 2 paracetamol, and like there'll be people who freak out when you take a third, right? And like, I don't know.
It's
like,
true. Most medical effects are really, really small.
Yeah. Right.
In general, I mean.
And you know, so it's just like but then also my cousin's like, yeah, it actually doesn't matter that much, right? Like, the one really big risk is smoking. Even smoking's like, that's like smoking a serious habit over 40 years. Yeah, that does really jack up the risk of lung disease. That's 40 years. It's not like if you and I just went and had a cigarette now, it's negligible what the effect is.
Yeah, I think there's all. Yeah,
right?
no,
like we've kind of gone so far the other way. Like obviously, if you're like seriously overweight, it's a big problem. But even friends who like work in the ER, they'd be like, yeah, the people who I see having cardiac arrests in their 40s are like weighing 500 pounds.
Right.
And we don't realize how many people there are like that because most of them are shut-ins doing nothing. Yeah. But like for your average person, they may have a beer belly or something.
No, that's a really good point. Like I think you're right that there are probably a lot of people who just meet the threshold of like the technical definition of obese, who are not necessarily at great risk of anything in particular, and perhaps and there's actually even the more extreme cases of people who just are big boned or just have certain body types, right? That are the sort of typical person might sort of call them obese or
Yeah.
sort of see them. There's a lot of stigma around just non-traditional body types, right? Or just any body type that's not the like the supermodel image. So that's obviously definitely a massive thing. And so there are ways of having a big body that are not at all necessarily like health problematic, I think.
Yeah.
But there is also this other thing though, that there is this kind of tendency, I think, where people want to be in the desire to not be like fat shaming and not stigmatizing. There is this sort of there's a slight overcorrection, I think, sometimes, because there's certain discourses or certain types of people will make certain types of arguments that seem to kind of like underrate the health severity of serious obesity. Like that the critique of obesity as a health problem itself is kind of like mythical. And I don't think you're saying that. I think we're just distinguishing between somewhat heavyweight or somewhat overweight people, over quote unquote overweight people who might actually be relatively perfectly healthy and perfectly fine, and extreme obesity, which is in fact associated with all different kinds of things like lower life expectancy and heart disease, these types of things. Have you ever seen that type of stuff? I mean, you'll sometimes see articles online and stuff like that, and certain sort of personalities who will almost kind of say that the worry about obesity or the very sort of claim that obesity is associated with serious health problems is itself kind of like mythical completely, and some people will argue that obesity is actually associated with these positive health effects, and I don't know enough about it to know, but I'm curious because it seems conflictual with a lot of the evidence.
Yeah, well, the study I saw was this Danish study, and it was kind of like over 40 years. So the claim it's making is that basically up until the 1980s, being obese was a health risk. But since the 1980s, it's actually not a health risk, it's actually healthier than being underweight now.
Now, is that true?
That's what it was saying.
I guess
I'm just going off the
study.
No,
I'm just curious. I obviously neither of us are.
And so the argument was this. So here's the interesting argument, right? Is that actually being underweight, as in having a low body fat percentage, also carries health risks, right? And then like the flip side is people who are anorexic. That's really stressing. Like there's a lot of like there's like there's people who die, like a lot of not a lot, but like people who die from anorexia put themselves in really serious health problems just because they're so
definitely
undernourished, right? There's that health risk, but there's also just not being hardy enough, right? Like actually one of the reasons, I just know this because my dad died of cancer, right? But like one of the serious health risks when you have cancer, like a large percentage of people who die from cancer starve to death, right? And actually being, when he was diagnosed with cancer, they said had a terminal diagnosis, but one of the things they said early on is you really have to keep your calorie consumption up. Because the cancer, one of the things it does actually starves your appetite. And so that's one of the reasons why like cannabis is used in cancer things, like up your appetite. Because people just lose the appetite and can't sustain themselves anymore. So if you're overweight and you get cancer, in some cases that actually keeps you alive longer, actually helps you stay alive, right? So there's weird stuff like that, right? And then apparently a lot of the obvious health risks associated with being overweight, it's a lot easier to treat now with medical intervention, right? So like the obvious one's cardiac arrest and like whatever, but actually we've gotten quite good at treating heart disease, right? With like drugs and stents and all that, right?
Yeah.
And doing bypass surgery.
Yeah.
Right? I think that technology's jumped like light years from like from the 1960s and 70s, right?
Right.
So in a weird way, the medicine's actually made it healthier to be overweight now.
Right. Yeah. That's interesting. I mean, I feel like, again, I'm not an expert on it at all. I don't know much about the research at all. But it's intuitively sensible and appealing to me that probably what you're saying is that there's a sort of upside down U shape, right, in the relationship between body weight or fat or whatever, however you want to measure it, and sort of health, optimality, right? So like middle levels, perhaps sort of low levels of on the higher end of body weight, medium to high body weight or whatever, could be ideal. But obviously, when you start approaching 600 pounds or something like that, you are probably...
I'd say up to XL.
Yeah.
Between XL and M, you're safe.
Put it this way, I would definitely agree with the idea that our society's typical image of the ideal healthy body is totally underweight.
Oh yeah, I mean, even for men, right? Like obviously women get it way worse than guys do, right? But I'm like the big male underpants model stereotype, right? Like you've basically got to have like 6% body fat to have like a six pack showing and stuff, right? And that's like a really...
And is that probably not healthy?
Yeah, like 10% is healthy, or 10 to 12, right? So you're undersized and you're like 50% undersized with the body fat you want, right? You probably want twice as much body fat as that, because you're basically making yourself emaciated so these muscles underneath your belly skin show, right? And that's like, you know.
If you get stuck in like the mountains in the cold, you're not going to do well.
Yeah, I mean, it's either unhealthy or it's like, you know, obviously professional athletes do this, but like professional athletes burning 5,000 calories a day, right? That's like not...
Damn.
Right, that's not a vibe. But, you know, like like someone who's like playing for the Southampton Football Club or whatever, they're probably doing 2 or 3 workouts that would kill us a day, right? Like they're the level they can exert because they've just done crazy physical fitness since they're kids. Plus they also have like everything calibrated for them. Plus probably a lot of them also do like serious performance enhancing interventions, right?
Yeah.
Legal and illegal, right? So you've got all of that poured into something, and then you compare it to like your average person. They've got no shot, and they've kind of put a mental construct in their head for like a unattainable ideal, right?
Yeah. Definitely.
So, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, totally. That's interesting.
Yeah, I think there's got to be other reasons besides body image for doing these things, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so that's interesting. So yeah, maybe I'll have to look into it. So maybe the lower end of overweight, or what our society defines as overweight, the lower end of overweight might actually be better than what our society defines as normal or optimal weight. That's interesting. Yeah. But I mean, obesity is as we think of it. Certainly, there is something about obesity that's new and is kind of like peculiar to kind of late capitalist kind of advanced countries, right?
I'd say but part of me is like, again, is it all that bad, right? Like, okay, so the obvious cause is that people eat more calories than they burn. Okay, so part of it's obviously a rise in a sedentary lifestyle, right? As we moved from manual labor to desk jobs, right? Okay, totally fine, right? But part of it's also just like access to calories. Like I'm sure like the starvation rate now amongst the poor in like developed countries is negligible compared to what it would have been even in the 19th century, right?
Of course.
Right, and that to me is like not a bad thing at all.
Oh,
right?
Sure.
Like, yeah, okay, so obviously we'd prefer healthier diets and all this, yada yada. But what's kind of weird to me is like that now seems to be the next wave, right? Is that now it's going to be mass availability of high quality food to people, right?
Exactly.
Well, this like you just look at like what restaurant chains serve now compared to when I was a kid, right?
Or like
what meals are now. Or...
Maybe you're right. I mean, that's definitely a happy thought. I don't know if it's just that maybe I'm just more pessimistic by temperament, but to me, I feel like it sure seems like it's just going to become increasingly polarized in the sense that, middle class people will start to eat healthier and healthier as we learn all the crazy negative health effects of what's in most typical foods, like, high fructose corn syrup and this sort of stuff. As knowledge around the insanely negative health effects of that sort of shit increases, middle class people will start to move towards much healthier options. But poor people are going to be left with nothing else but fucking McDonald's and shit like that.
Yeah, maybe, but I think that also like those places will start. Like, they'll basically figure out cheaper ways to do that, right?
Okay.
Like, I mean, to me, it's a couple things, right? Like, there's this movement to always cook at home, and I actually cook a fair bit for myself, right? But part of me is also like, is that really like the best, right? I'm like, that's like. If you follow like all these life hacking things, you actually do everything they ask. Like there's a way you're working yourself to the bone doing that too, even like in the pursuit of efficiencies, right? And like to me, what's miraculous is that basically anyone now can have all their meals prepared and served for them. Right?
Yeah,
and that's really new, right? Like that was you go back 100 years and most of human population with subsistence farming. Like they had to not just make their own food, they had to farm their little plot of land in order to sustain themselves.
That's
right?
true. I'm actually very sympathetic to that argument.
Yeah.
That's basically that. Did you see that Jacobin article about sort of? I think the author calls this. It's what the author calls culinary modernism, which I think is just a kind of cute term that they came up with to basically describe the sort of precisely what you're talking about, sort of the ability to deliver, basically decent food of different, the different food groups in a basically tasty way to like millions of people, right? That we've evolved this basic kind of technical capacity. The article, it got a lot of play. You probably like it because it's basically arguing what you're arguing, that this gets a bad rap from sort of lots of lefties who kind of think it's industrial capitalism of food and this kind of shit, and there's all this sort of negative energy directed towards that, but this author's kind of like, no, it's actually fucking great, and we should be celebrating this, and we should just be trying to figure out how to improve it and extend it to more people. But it's kind of interesting because she's sort of right, that the author of this article, I forget her name, that it is often seen as a bad thing, but actually it's pretty incredible on some level.
Yeah, no, I have this weird view. Like, I've got this other thing, like this kind of, it's an abstract, it's nothing more than that, say on my computer, but it's like a similar thought, is that one day I was like having to do some house cleaning, and I was kind of grumbling to myself and thinking, really what we need is universal single-payer house cleaning. Like the government, we should just pay more taxes, and the government should come in and have like house cleaners for everybody.
Or make robots to do it.
Yeah, or make robots, or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Because again, it's like, it's domestic labor, and obviously anyone who's rich, right? Not even rich, like anyone who like attains a certain standard in like professional class, right? One of the first things they do is they start hiring labor to do a lot of the chores around the house, right? So it's like cleaning the house, doing laundry, picking up the dry cleaner, right? Like, so it's quite clear that like no one wants to do this shit, right? Like some people may claim they do, but they're just oppressed in some way, shape, or form, right? And so, there's an obvious feminist argument that most of that domestic chore labor tends to fall on women. So it's like a gender patriarchy issue. Mm-hmm. And so what's the way to correct those kinds of imbalances? Some kind of redistributive mechanism. And in this case, it's that, it's a job, and so that job should be remunerated. And then who should do it? The government should. We should pay more taxes, and then the state, you should have like a national house cleaning service.
Yeah.
They come into your house, and they clean all your shit for you, and someone gets paid for it, and everyone loves it, and that creates jobs for people. And then, maybe eventually robots come and replace it.
Exactly. I mean, this is the whole, fully automated luxury communism move, right?
Yeah.
We should just be we should have mass investment in basically making souped-up robots to do all of this shit for everyone.
Yeah. I'm in favor of it.
And then we all just have time to flourish and do whatever the fuck.
Yeah, and same with food, right? It's like, okay, so everyone wants that. I don't necessarily... I actually think that most people don't even want to go to restaurants. Most people want like nice food delivered to them at the end of the day, right? And like, there's obviously an education thing about what's a healthy versus an unhealthy choice, and there probably is, like, I don't even know. Like, I honestly think that if most people had access to kind of nutrient-rich, healthy foods in appropriate portions, we're just told, here's what you need to eat, and here's what it is, I'm going to provide it for you. Most people would just follow a plan like that, and then said, okay, maybe once or twice a week you can stuff your gourd. But I actually think that most people, if that kind of basic need was met for them, wouldn't think that much about it. I actually think there's a way in which the manufacturing of choice by capitalism, saying, isn't it great you have all these choices and you default to something, you probably don't even realize why you default to the unhealthy. If you were nudged towards healthy whatever food, that kind of, everyone's obviously got like slightly different culinary tastes and stuff. If you could kind of meet all those things and just provide it, again, I actually think most people would default towards that.
True, it's true, probably. And also, no, I see your point. I don't know if I agree, but I see your point. I mean, on a related but slightly different note, have you noticed that grocery delivery is very big in the UK? Yeah. In a way it's not in the States, as far as I remember. From what I remember in the States, you only really get your groceries delivered if you're like a senior citizen, or if you're handicapped, or if you have some sort of special need. Here it seems very popular. Like a lot of people do it just by default. Yeah. Is that right? That's my impression?
Oh yeah, it's kind of funny. Like Alice doesn't want to do it. I'm kind of like, let's do it. We've done it a bit, and I like it, and Alice hates it. It's kind of like this weird thing.
Seems dope. I haven't. We haven't really done it. I don't think we've ever done it. But only because it's just I'm not culturally like I've never done it before. I've never thought of ordering groceries, but it seems like a great idea.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I don't know what Alice. So here's the funny, like, if you want to get like domestic, whatever.
It's cheap too, right? Like you don't even have to pay it. It's like a dollar or something, a pound.
I think it's a pound. I'm not sure if it's like any more. I imagine it's a little bit more expensive than the grocery store, but maybe not. I have no idea. It's worth trying.
I think it's as cheap as just a pound to have it delivered. And that's why it's so popular, because it's not that expensive. Anyway, I'm not sure, but go ahead.
Yeah, no. So Alice is like against it, but she's also against grocery shopping. Like she hates those two things, but she doesn't want us to do that. It's kind of like, but I think it's like a very weird American programming.
Is she opposed because for like ethical or political reasons, or what?
No.
Just.
I mean, her one complaint is that, and this is kind of true, is that when you get produce, it's often close to its expiry date. Right? So that's like the one kind of minor issue. But I'm kind of also like, a lot of produce expiry dates kind of like undersell a lot. Like if it says something like May 10th, you can eat it for a week. Yeah. So I'm a bit less concerned about that. That's the one complaint. But my bigger sense is that weird cultural programming you have in the US, you have to go to do the groceries yourself, right? So
is that a cultural programming?
I think so. I think it's like you find it weird. Why haven't you done it since you moved here?
It's not because I feel like some ethical compulsion to do grocery shopping. Mm-hmm. It's more just that I don't see ordering groceries online to be I don't see that as like an appropriate or it's not
appropriate. You're making a normative thing, right? Where to me, I'm like, okay, let's think about it, right? You basically pick a slot where you know you're going to be home, and then it's like 5 minutes. We've done it, so it's like 5 minutes to set it up and order it. It's as easy as ordering books.
Yeah, I don't know why I don't do that.
Right?
You know what? Maybe to be honest, since I walk past the grocery store on the way home from campus.
Yeah.
I think I kind of like it, maybe. Because it's like I just stop in and grab a few things, and it's like maybe there's something about it I'd like, but actually I mean I want to minimize all unnecessary alienated labor, so I'm all for basically anything that will get tasks off my list of things to do. So
I'm gonna just do it. I'm gonna do it.
This is good. Well, this is inspiring me. Maybe I'll start.
Let's do it without Alice's permission. It'll cause a crisis in our house.
No, this is good. See, this podcast is like delivering actionable insights for me.
So what are we doing? We're going to take up gambling, and we're going to order groceries, and you're going to take up kettlebells.
Shit, is this becoming like a self-help kind of like Tim Ferriss competitor type thing? No. I do not think I would.
No, I don't want to help anyone else. I think it's like auto-help.
Yeah, you're right. We're just helping ourselves.
Actually what we should do is like just experiment ourselves and report back.
We're just helping ourselves,
All right, so do you want to do kettlebells, or should you and I go try CrossFit together?
No, like I said, I don't want to be part of a culture, so I don't think I could do CrossFit. Okay. As we determined, kettlebells will not work for my goals and needs.
What are your goals and needs?
Well, like I said, it needs to be quick, easy, and I need to be able to do it around the house without much learning or push-ups. Yeah, that is actually what I do sometimes, and pull-ups. So maybe I'll just stick with that like old-fashioned kind of type of exercise.
I would say if you did push-ups, pull-ups, squats, push, pull, squat. You need some kind of pressing. I guess the push-ups will press. And if you did those three.
Okay, good. I'll do it, and then I'll report back on our next podcast.
Go like fun. There's like 100 push-up program, 100 squat program, and then do a pull-up program.
Dude, you know what I might do? I might start doing cold bath.
What's that?
Cold water immersion. Basically, just run a cold bath first thing in the morning.
What do you get out of that?
A lot. It generates norepinephrine, which is basically one of the hormones that helps you with basically kind of executive function, like alertness, vigilance.
How long do you have to sit in a cold
bath?
In
fact, modafinil, one of the nootropics that I like. That basically works by generating norepinephrine. And so a cold bath kind of is like a dose of the same thing as modafinil, if I'm understanding these things correctly. I'm not trained in any of this stuff, and I've just sort of pieced together what I can from reading about it online. So yeah, and actually cold baths have other positive effects when you do them regularly. So I think I'm going to start working that into my routine. Also just sort of mental willpower and discipline.
How long do you have to do the cold bath for?
I don't know. I could read up on that. I'm planning to just do sort of just short immersions, like basically go underwater for 30 seconds, just chill, let it wake my body the fuck up like crazy, and then probably just kind of rinse my hair a little bit, So
Or
like
like
a little
cold
bit
shower.
of cleaning too. Yeah, I could do cold shower. That just seems like less attractive to me. Something about being totally underwater in cold water. I mean, I'm attracted to it. It seems like a challenge because it sounds really, it's going to be hard and uncomfortable. Like, I'm not going to want to do it. But there's something I like about sort of subjecting myself to low-level punishment, kind of. Just kind of like waking myself up and being able to subject myself to discomfort. It's kind of like a stoic thing, actually, really. As a spiritual practice, in a sense.
It's good.
Yeah. Also, can't you just imagine, like, being submerged in cold water and then getting out and you're, like, starting your day after, like, having this, like, fucking kick to your nervous system?
All right, you do that and report back.
Okay, we'll do it.
Are we done the podcast then?
Are we? What do you think?
How long have we gone?
Oh, it doesn't matter. We can quit whenever. How long? Oh, shit, we've gone an hour and 45 minutes.
Yeah,
we said we were only going to...
long time. So I think it's a good time to stop.
Okay.
I'll throw you in a cold bath.
All right. Any last thoughts?
No.
Thank you, Jonathan.
You're welcome.
It's been a pleasure. No, I got the fuck out of my house. No, I'm just kidding. All right, I'll stop it.